Hello and welcome. This is going to be a review of the Pilot E95 fountain pen. The E is just an abbreviation for E-light, which is also written down on the cap of the pen. And it is a small little pocket pen manufactured by the brand of Pilot. So it's a Japanese pen and you can expect really good quality control compared to some other brands which have a bit of trouble keeping the nib sizes consistent. So before I start with the writing samples of the nib, I'd say let's check out some of the cool design aspects and features of it. First of all, it has a nice clip with, as you already saw, Pilot engraved on it. And it snaps quite well onto things. It's not really stiff, but it's also not springy like other clips, but it's really nice. So the clip itself is roughly 3 centimeters long if you look at the part where you can actually slide down, this section here. And the whole length of it, if you look at the beginning and the end of it, is, yes, roughly 4 centimeters and some millimeters. So the pen itself is also quite small, not the smallest pocket pen I have there. For example, this Travelers Company press pen is even smaller, but it's better to look at it in some metrics everybody can use at home. So we have the scale over here, and it's, yes, roughly 12 centimeters long. If you prefer comparisons with standard fountain pens like the Lamy Safari, it's a tiny bit shorter than the Lamy Safari, roughly 2 centimeters in capped form. But if I uncap this pen, it becomes quite large. It's then, if I posted the cap onto it, it's even a little bit bigger than the Lamy Safari when it is capped. If I uncap this and post it, it becomes a bit bigger again. But this size is still really comfortable to hold. I don't have really small hands and don't really big hands, so I'm about average, but it still has a bit of length which is unused by me. So if you have a bit bigger hands, you should still be able to use it. And a nice feature of it, because I have still a bit length of it left, I can go up here and grab it a bit more above, which is also really nice if you don't want to be writing like this and be more loose. So the mechanism itself is a snap cap, and it's really satisfying to post it. It requires a little tiny bit of force, not much. If you require a lot of force, then there's probably something wrong with it. You just need a little bit of force to start the off and on mechanism. And it's gliding so smoothly that it's really, really nice to cap it and uncap it. So it's really, really a satisfying experience. But since this is also a snap cap, you will be interested in its longevity. So I say let's take a look at the mechanism itself. It has these tension bars in here, in the inner cap, see. And yes, they're made of metal. Let's say they last pretty long. Over time, it will become probably a bit more loose, but then this feeling will just be even smoother. And since this is a pen that already existed for a long time, you can be sure that this pen will last for a long time. And this mechanism won't give up so easily, even after many years. So I'd say let's look at the clip. The clip itself posts nicely. It's not a really soft and springy clip, but it's also not the stiffest out there. So you can actually even move it without a lot of force. So let's look at some of the design aspects of it. It has this shiny surface down here, and here it's branding, and the E-Light from the naming part of it is also written down here. It's the Burgundy version, and there's also a black version out there. So I'd also say let's take a look in here first before we start with writing samples. And it unscrews. You need to be careful to not lose this part. The fun fact is you can also do this. So you don't have to worry about losing it, and you just can screw it on again. But let's unscrew this again and look at the filling system of it. Just takes regular Pilot cartridges and I don't know about your region of the world, but for me it came with an additional Pilot Conforti converter. As you can see, it posts quite deep in there. So you need to consider this. A Con70 converter sadly does not even fit in there. It doesn't even go deep in enough. And it would also be way too long. So you have to either refill cartridges or use a Conforti converter. And let's come to the nib itself. Let's just wipe down once so it's clean. You can actually read what's written on there. It's an EF nib and a 14-karat gold nib, as you'd expect around this price point. And I'd say it's a quite soft nib by default. It's not a flex nib, by no means, but it's softer than the other gold nibs that I have. So it has some springiness to it. Oh, I also forgot. It has also a nice threading going on here. The threads are not small, and since they are not sharp, you can expect them to last very long. Which is also important because it's metal threading on resin threads. So yeah, you don't have to worry about this breaking as well, in my opinion. And since it's a Japanese pen, you also have quite a lot quality control by default. not like with other brands. I really love my Lamy pens, but I think it was even written at some point on their own German website that if you buy an EF nib, you could theoretically end up with an F size nib. Maybe they have better quality control these days, but it's still a thing to consider. I really love this pen, or rather these pens. I have way too many of them, but it's really not as great as the quality control of a Pilot pen, or rather a Japanese fountain pen. And this, you could say this is because it's a low price Lamy fountain pen, but Pilot also has great quality control for other pens which cost way less, like this Pilot Kakuno, which smiles in your face. And as I mentioned, it has a bit of springiness to it, the nib of the Pilot Elite 95. You don't have the springiness on this Kakuno, for example, which costs way less. It has a steel nib. It doesn't really matter if it's a steel or gold nib, if the nib is manufactured in a bad way, so that you don't even use the physical properties of gold effectively and efficiently. It doesn't matter. But I think they really made use of this gold nib, or rather of the gold properties of the material, of this alloy. So it's not stiff. Like, for example, Sailor pens and nibs of the Platinum 376. This is quite a stiff nib, although it's the soft fine. So this default Pilot Elite 95 nib is softer than the default soft fine nib of the Platinum 3776. So let's start with some writing samples of this EF nib. And I need to be honest here, it didn't write perfectly out of the box, but what fixed it for me was that I pushed down a bit harder on paper, not too hard, you need to be careful, so the slit here became a bit wider. Not a lot, I haven't used anything to measure if it really got bigger, but the ink flow just got a bit more, because out of the box, this is a quite dry writer. If you like it, you don't have to do anything at all, but if you want it to be a bit wetter, you can press it down a bit harder and look if it becomes better for you. Before you do this, you should always make sure you don't break it, because the warranty won't cover you in this case. If you mess it with yourself on your own. But it's a really great pen, and I'd say you don't even have to adjust it if it comes to you. But if you want a bit more ink flow out of it, you can do this, or just use really wet inks that flow really nicely. So let's come to the writing samples. I probably have a hard start because it was unkept for so long. Yes, but it also writes again if I apply a bit of pressure to it. Zoom in. So it's already started writing. This is not something you can expect of every pen. If we take this Lamy Safari, for example, if I would leave this unkept, it would also write, because the German fine or extra fine is quite wide, so you have no problems at all. But if I have this fine nib here and leave it for a minute, or how long whatever time I had it unkept for this review, this pen would have really hard start and it wouldn't be as easy to get it right again as here, as this Pilot Elite 95. But it's also really dependent on the inks itself, how long you can leave it unkept. So let's write a bit. If I apply no pressure at all and just have it here in my hand and draw some lines with it, you see these lines are quite small. Now applied a bit of pressure, but if you use no pressure at all, they become really, really thin. And if you use the scale again, you can see they are smaller than a millimeter, way smaller. So if you apply some more pressure to it, which is quite a subjective statement, so you need to figure it out yourself, how much pressure is required with this pen once you own it, but you can go even broader. And if you are not scared to flex a bit more, let's say, apply way more pressure, you can even get lines as thick as this. So it has lot of variety to it. It's a bit drier if you write upwards than downwards, but it still has a really nice flow. And the really, really thin lines here, if you apply no pressure at all, are also really nice if you want some really thin ones. So let's also write a sentence. What would a review be without a sentence? I won't use the standard brown fox jumps over whatever. We just write some random sentence. Yes, and as you can see, you can have some variety in there, in your writing as well. If you train a bit more than me with this, you can probably figure out some really nice calligraphy effects with it because of its properties to go from thin to thick. But I really wouldn't apply too much force to it because it's a soft nib, it's not a flex nib. So I wouldn't risk breaking it just to get a bit thicker lines. These ones are fine, these ones also, but I wouldn't go beyond this. If you get this pen, you need to figure out for yourself how much pressure to apply and how comfortable you are with certain amounts of pressure. What also can be mentioned that this pen, as you saw, it skipped at some places when I had recent lines. It's really dependent on the angle you write with. If I move the angle a bit, for example, now it won't write. Now it writes smoothly and does not skip. If I adjust angle still a little bit, it will skip a lot if I have just a little bit of pressure and go a bit faster. So you also need to be mindful how you hold it. But I'd say it's because it's such a small size of the nib, as I said, a Japanese EF, which is also way smaller than a European EF. So it makes sense that you be mindful of how you hold it so the ink can flow nicely down there. So this was the review of the Pilot E95. I hope it helped you. I didn't write that much with it, but I think these lines here in comparison are way more useful than the default writing of sentences of the ink's name or just these lines. This is more if you want to look at how it can perform in continuous movements for calligraphy or whatever, in my opinion. And I really prefer just having some kind of gradient scale, just like I did here, just to get a feel for it, for the variety of lines and how it writes. And I should also mention, just like with every other Pilot fountain pen, you don't even need a gold nib. It doesn't matter what kind of material. The nib is well made. There's no ink in there. But the Pilot Kakuno is not much less smoother than the gold nib. Because of its stringiness, it will absorb some of the shocks when you write with it and feel even smoother, which is a really nice feel. But it won't be that much of a difference compared to a steel nib. It's definitely a difference if you have some experience with fountain pens. This will Pilot nibs in general will be one of the smoothest experience for you if you use EF nibs. And it really feels, often people describe it like gliding over the paper like butter. It's not that smooth, at least not on this default college block paper. If you use something smoother, for example, the optic paper from Oxford, which is also a really nice fountain pen paper, the optic papier. It's really nice. I recommend it. It will become, it's really smooth. You almost have no feedback at all. And if you apply no pressure at all, or you don't really feel it. You hear a bit, but you don't feel it. It's really, really smooth, the nib. But just with every other Pilot nib. So if you have other Japanese fountain pen, for example this Pilot Custom 776, here you have this not scratchy but feedback like on a pencil. You often hear this. And the pencil also glides really smoothly over the paper. And this one is just smooth. So I'd say this was everything I could say about this pen. It's a nice writer, it's really reliable. I like that you can use a converter with it. Theoretically, you can also disassemble it, but it will be a bit annoying because you have to go all the way in there and unscrew some things. So you need some makeshift tools to unscrew the inner parts for the feet, for example, and to not damage them. It's totally possible to disassemble them. I will link a video in the description where someone shows you how to do it. but there's really no need to do this, and it would be a bit risky to do it because you could break the pen, because it's so deep down that it's easy to misjudge how much force you actually need to apply and how much you still need to twist it. So and I'd say it's a pen for everybody. Size is great, perfect writer, but I wouldn't want to write for really long with this. It's really pleasant to hold, but if I am in a long writing session for some university exam or whatever, and you write notes for over an hour, or just make some notes to learn for the exam and sit there for hours, I'd say normal sized pens are still the best. Especially because you can just put a Con 70 in there. So, really thank you for watching. And if you have some other insights for this pen, or if you want to know something else, you can just write it in the comments. And pretty nice if everybody helped each other, if someone knew some other aspects of this that I didn't mention, or just wants to know something that I didn't mention in this video. So, have a nice day.